When it comes to global trade, we see these massive, splashy numbers all the time in the headlines, right? But do those big figures actually tell us the whole story? I think we can do better. Let's dig in and find a new way to look at what's really happening.
All right, take this number, for example, $66.1 billion. That was the total value of India's imports from Russia in a recent fiscal year. I mean, that's a huge figure, right? It's the kind of number that just jumps off the page, dominates the news cycle, and gets everyone talking. And on the surface, it seems to tell a very simple, very dramatic story.
But here's the thing about those simple stories. They're usually not the full picture. So should we really be judging a country's entire trade relationship on just one single total number? Is that the right way to go? Or, just maybe, is that whole method a little bit flawed? Especially when you're talking about a country with a massive population?
And that really gets us to the heart of what we're talking about today, the problem with just looking at the totals. Because when you completely ignore the sheer scale of a country, how many people actually live there, these big numbers can paint a really distorted picture of what's going on.
So, to get a much clearer view, we need a different tool in our toolbox. And that tool is per capita. It sounds kind of fancy, but it's a really simple and powerful idea. It just means for each person. So instead of looking at the gigantic total, we're going to break it down and see how much that is for each individual.
Okay, let me show you exactly why this matters so much. Picture two countries, right? Let's call them country A and country B. Now they both import the exact same dollar amount, $100 million. But country A has a population of 10 million, while country B has a whopping 1 billion people. So when you look at it per capita, country A's imports work out to $10 per person. But for country B, it's just 10 cents per person. That is a massive 100 times difference, and it shows you perfectly why looking only at that big total number can be so misleading.
Okay, so now that we've got the concept down, let's apply this per capita lens to some real-world data. We'll start with the view from Russia.
So, here's that big headline number again, $66.1 billion. This is the figure that you always see, the one that frames the entire conversation around India's economic relationship with Russia.
But now, we know better, don't we? We know to ask the next question. What does this number actually look like when you divide it by India's enormous population of nearly 1.5 billion people? What's the real value per person? And the answer? It's $45.20. That's it. When you actually do the math, that massive $66 billion headline number boils down to about $45 per Indian citizen for the whole year. Now, is that a lot? Is it a little? Well, on its own, it's hard to tell. The real aha moment comes when you start comparing it to other countries.
And this is where the comparison just completely flips the script. Look at this. India's per capita import from Russia, that $45, is less than half of the European Union's average. And then you look at Turkey, and it's just blown out of the water. Turkey's figure is over $400 per person. So all of a sudden, the story isn't about India's huge total trade volume anymore. It's about its surprisingly modest engagement when you look at it person by person.
And this isn't just a one-off thing with Russia. The pattern holds. We see the exact same kind of distortion when we look at trade data involving Iran. Yeah, it's the same story all over again. If you only focus on the total import numbers from Iran, you get a really skewed idea of who its most significant economic partners actually are on a per-person level.
And once again, the per capita view is pretty eye-opening. Turkey, yet again, is by far the biggest import partner from Iran on this list, coming in at over $29 per person. Compare that to India's number, it's just $1.37. That's even less than the EU's average. And the US? A tiny 2 cents. The headline numbers, they just don't even come close to telling you this story.
So look, this is way more than just a fun math exercise. Shifting our focus from those big, empty totals to a per capita view has real, tangible consequences. It affects public perception, it affects international diplomacy, it fundamentally changes how we think about what's fair and what's accurate on the world stage. There are really 4 key reasons why this approach is so important. First, it's about fairness. You're not unfairly penalizing countries just because they have a lot of people. Second, that leads to accuracy. You get to see the true economic impact on each person. Third,
With a clearer, more accurate picture, you can cut through the noise and combat misinformation that's so often driven by those misleading headlines. And finally, all of this leads to more informed policy. It helps leaders make better decisions because they can actually see where the economic ties are truly the strongest.
You know, Dr. Ryan Baidya, whose research inspired this whole explainer, he just puts it so perfectly. He says, goods and services are imported for people. And that's it, isn't it? It's such a simple, powerful truth. At the end of the day, trade is about serving individuals. And if you're just comparing these huge national numbers without that human context, well, you're fundamentally distorting reality.
So that leaves us with one last, really critical question to think about. As we're all consuming news, as we watch nations interact on the global stage, what lens are we going to choose to look through? Are we just going to stick with the easy, blind totals and the dramatic headlines? Or are we going to demand something better? A clearer, fairer picture that's actually rooted in economic truth? Because honestly, the answer to that question, it changes everything.